you see the businesses that were under the protection of the name that should not be spoken?
You can say Jabba.
Under the protection of Jabba the Hutt.
He's dead. He can't hurt you.
I was concerned that you would feel insulted.
Why would I feel insulted?
Because you felt threatened.
Well, now I am insulted.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Welcome to another Book of Boba Fett Wednesday. Mavar Tigar. This is the 124th Hover Vespa riding episode of Mando Vision. Nargai Tom. And thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. You know the best way to find us. It's on social media at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Please make sure you're liking, subscribing, sharing, and following the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. And hey, if you have the time and the inclination, 5-star reviews, an insanely great way to help shows, especially small independent podcasts like us, stand out, not get lost in the shuffle, and defeat the tyranny of the algorithm. We truly, truly appreciate your time and efforts in doing those things. Well, we're here again, like I said, it's Book of Boba Fett Wednesday. Chapter 3 is here, and let me tell you what, the monitoring I've been doing on the social medias has been interesting, divisive, colorful. I don't know what to process about everyone's sort of collective feelings. A very mixed review, very mixed bag after what was sort of like a universally praised episode with Chapter 2 for the Book of Boba Fett. This week, and maybe unfairly, expectations have been raised to a higher level for this third installment. And if you're a longtime listener of the podcast of Mando Vision, you know our sort of standard take on things is to have a more positive spin on Star Wars and not get into too much of the negative stuff, right? You know, we want to be honest, we want to be critical, but we don't want to tear things apart. We don't want to tear things down and tear the people down who made Star Wars for us. And sometimes that's a difficult balance, right? Because being critical sometimes implies a certain amount of negativity. And that's not the case. With this chapter of the Book of Boba Fett, what I want to say right off the mark is I liked this installment of the Book of Boba Fett. I dug this chapter. I enjoyed it very, very much. There were, however, choices that I disagreed with. And we're going to talk about those choices. And we're going to kind of explore why me as a person, as an individual, didn't agree with the storytelling choices that were made here. Before we get into those, into kind of getting into the nitty gritty of the episode and kind of breaking it down, probably in a bit of a different way than we have in the past. I don't know how much we're going to explore the beat by beat, nuts and bolts of the episode, because there's a lot to talk about it in a different manner tonight, and I hope you'll indulge me as we kind of talk about the show in a probably a different manner than we have in the past when we do these episode reviews and breakdowns. Before we get into that, though, before we kind of like dive head first into this episode, one of the things I wanted to address, and you're going to hear on Monday's Star Wars: The Clone Wars rewatch episode, I sort of launched into a bit of a I don't know if it's soapboxing necessarily, but I do dive into I sort of launch into a tirade about spoilers and how everyone has again, we've had 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and the majority of people seem to be pretty good about holding off on spoilers until after the weekends, right? Because that show was dropping on Fridays, and we wouldn't get spoilers necessarily posted until Monday. That has gone out the window with the Book of Boba Fett, and it has gone, I think, to the nth level, the next level with today's episode, as massive spoilers were just blasted all over social media, early this morning. And so if you hadn't seen the episode yet, you knew what to look for. You knew who might be on the show, what might be on the show, and that's a real bummer. And so I'll talk more about that. You'll hear me talk about more about that on Monday. What I wanted to focus on today, before we dive into the episode, as sort of our lead in here, is right now on social media. Again, this episode so far is receiving very mixed reviews. Whether you agree or disagree, and again, you don't have to like the episode. If you don't like it, that's not a problem. Remember, the MandoVision podcast is for all opinions. All opinions are welcome. I do ask that you have a supporting thesis for why you don't like the episode. Just back it up. That's all I want to know. And that's cool. And we're going to be all good. You do not have to like, and you do not have to agree with me. And that's the kind of community that we want to foster here on the show. But what I've seen a lot of on social media, and I don't believe the listeners of this fine podcast are in this group at all, because the people that I've had interactions with who listen to this show are smart, savvy people who are willing to recognize, like, all right, this is chapter 3 of 7. Let's see how things play out. And again, you don't have to like each individual chapter. Like, there's highs and lows, and again, I have criticisms for this one as well. But the amount of criticism and a fair amount of vitriol that is being directed to this episode's director, one Mr. Robert Rodriguez, is completely unfounded. And that's just my opinion. But anyone who's attacking Robert Rodriguez because they think this episode is subpar or weak, no, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. And to support my argument, I will refer to The Mandalorian Season 2. The episode that Robert Rodriguez directed was one of the best of the season. All right, I believe it was not chapter 7, but the 7th episode in that season. When Grogu is kidnapped by the Dark Troopers and taking him off Gideon. And Boba Fett, goes to get his armor from Din Djarin, and he wrecks house on those stormtroopers with his Durfee stick. It is a fantastic episode of the show, one of the highlights of season 2. So anybody who's out there posting that Robert Rodriguez has no business directing Star Wars because he's the director of Spy Kids, get out of town. Check yourself before I wreck yourself, because you are nuts. And Robert, I don't know why people have sort of like diminished Robert Rodriguez's film portfolio to like the director of Spy Kids and Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Like, no. Like, this guy directed El Mariachi and Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico. He did half of Grindhouse with Quentin Tarantino, From Dusk Till Dawn. Like, this is a very accomplished film director. And if you're trying to convince me that Robert Rodriguez has no business directing Star Wars, I cannot more vehemently disagree with you. You are so wrong. And that's just my opinion on your opinion. And I hope we can have a discourse, a civil one, about that. But the flaws in this episode, I think you could trace back to a storytelling perspective, to the story itself. And this episode is written by Jon Favreau. But can we criticize Jon Favreau? Apparently we cannot. Jon Favreau is now considered to be like the savior of Star Wars. What he does is flawless. And apparently, according to a certain percentage of the internet who's attacking Robert Rodriguez took Jon Favreau's story and ruined it. I don't think Jon Favreau told a very good story in this episode. I like the episode by and large, but there are some fundamental flaws in it, and I will talk about those when we get into the breakdown. But if you're mad about this episode, if you're upset or disappointed, or you think something didn't go right, don't attack Robert Rodriguez. The man had a story and a script to work with, and it's from Jon Favreau. And as much as we all want to worship at the altar of Favreau and Filoni, they are human people. They are not infallible, and sometimes choices are made. And again, this is still only the 3rd chapter of 7. Let's see how this lands, and then we can reevaluate once we sort of know the whole story. This episode, again, there are things that I want to talk about, that I have concerns from a storytelling perspective, and just a general thematic perspective too. But by and large, I still like the episode. But I'm like, that's a choice. That was, I see something on the screen. I'm like, that is an interesting choice. I wouldn't have done that. But guess what? They don't pay me to write the Book of Boba Fett. They don't pay me to direct the Book of Boba Fett. So all we're doing is we're being fans, and we're having a conversation. And that's what I want us to do. I want us to stay civil. I want us to talk about the show, and we can agree, and we can agree to disagree. That's all that's what we're doing here. So whether you like this one, whether you didn't like this one, let's stick around. I hope you stick around to hear my point of view, and please, by all means, engage with me on social media at Mando_Vision, Twitter, Instagram. You can do a long form diatribe against me or supporting on me at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. And again, civil discourse. We are trying to foster a positive community for Star Wars fans. I don't have it in me anymore to deal with the haters. Let's see where the show goes. If by the end it's a colossal failure, we can talk about that. I'm willing to be honest. I'm not as much of a diehard Star Wars fan as I am. I do not believe myself to be a sycophant. If it's not good, I'm more than happy to talk about it not being good and why it's disappointing. And Lord knows, again, if you're a longtime listener, many of you know my thoughts on Rise of Skywalker. And again, while I haven't dove into that full bore, I've made enough allusions to the fact that like Rise of Skywalker, not my favorite Star Wars movie or of them all. And so I wanted to preface that as we dive into this episode. If you want to blame Robert Rodriguez, you can, but you also need to put Jon Favreau in the same group. All right? It's TV, streaming, movies, the whole thing. It's a collaborative process. The director, the writer, the whole thing. It's all together. You can't roast Rodriguez while you're still praising Favreau for saving Star Wars. And I guess that's really what I'm trying to get at. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about the episode in particular, because there are some interesting things to talk about. Highs and lows. It's a bit of a rocky road, but this episode also does a lot of table setting. There's a lot to get into. There's a lot to pull apart, and a lot to speculate on. This is an episode full of Star Wars Easter eggs, from Ralph McQuarrie references. You got a Pelimoto cameo in Mos Eisley. You have the droid carriage thing that was toting Anakin and Padme around on Tatooine. I mean, this episode is just rife with callbacks. You got the Bomar monks. You have the Womp Rats and the little frog guy who eats everybody. And what else? We got the Stormtrooper helmets on the Pikes that we saw back in The Mandalorian in Season 1. I mean, it's just, again, callbacks, visual references that we know before. So many things. And we're going to talk about that on the other side of the bump. I know I've run a little bit long in the intro here, but I just, one of the things that really irked me while checking out social media this afternoon was the number of people that seem to be coming after Robert Rodriguez for this episode. And again, this man directed one of the finest episodes of The Mandalorian Season 2. And now you're going to come after him because you didn't like the swoop gang in this episode, or you didn't like the way certain things were shot, or you just didn't like the overall story of this episode. He didn't write it. Somebody else did, and we all know who it was. So if you want to attack Rodriguez, you got to attack Favreau too. Just be even. All I'm asking you, be even. All right? That's all I'm saying. All right, let's get into the episode proper. Let's talk about things. Let's do it. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
After the sail barge disaster, there was a power vacuum. Bib Fortuna assumed Jabba's mantle. Under Master Bib's watchful eye, Mos Espa was divided amongst 3 families. The Trandoshans took the city's center, the Aquilish, the workers' district here, and the Clatoonians, the starport and upper sprawl. Master Bib did not have the power of Jabba, so he relied on uneasy alliances to preserve his tribute and title. All of this while lining the pockets of Mayor Mog Shays.
Where does that leave us now?
Everyone is waiting to see what kind of leader you are.
All right, as we did not do the episode introduction proper, let's do it right now. Again, Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Espa. This episode, written by Jon Favreau, directed by Robert Rodriguez. Our plot, Boba Fett must deal with 2 very different threats. Our top cast this week, Tamara Morrison is Boba Fett, Ming-Na Wen is Fennec Shand, Matt Berry is 8D8, the voice of, Stephen Root is Lortha Peel, Sophie Thatcher is Darash, Jordan Bolger is Scad, Carrie Jones is Black Chrysanthemum, Danny Trejo as the Rancor Keeper. Yes, that is right. Danny Trejo is in the Star Wars universe before me, and I never thought that don't get me wrong, I love Danny Trejo, but the fact that I'm saying Danny Trejo's in the Star Wars universe blows my mind. Though it does make a certain amount of sense that Robert Rodriguez would be the one to bring him aboard. So why not? Machete himself, now in the Star Wars universe proper. David Pasquesi, I'm never going to say your name right, sir, I apologize, as Mok Shaz's Major Domo, Frank Trigg as the Gamorrean Guard, Colin Haynes, the other Gamorrean Guard, Daniel Logan as young Boba Fett, Javier Jimenez as the Tuscan Chief, Jonah Bennett as Tuscan Warrior. This goes on and on and on, and some of these people barely are in this episode. All right, we'll stop there. Again, Mok Shaz's Major Domo is the last major character we need to really discuss in any kind of significant terminology here. So yeah, you heard what we're talking about there. This is an episode full of interesting choices, right? So we're in the 3rd chapter, and Boba Fett is just now choosing to get briefed on the situation in Mos Espa, how the territory's been divvied up. Is that because he was naive when he first killed Bib Fortuna and assumed Jabba's throne, that he just controlled everything? And he's as he spent more time in Mos Espa, he is sort of like, there appears to be more going on here than I thought would be the case. And we talked about this. We talked about how it seemed that Bib Fortuna was not the strong ruler, the strong daimyo that Jabba the Hutt was, and 8D8 basically confirms that. You know, he didn't have the resources, he didn't have the power, he did not have the influence to maintain the level of control that Jabba did. So he struck a deal. He made bargains. He made truces and accords with other families to split Mos Espa, and that's what we're dealing with here. We have the Trandoshans, we have the Aquilish, and we have the Clatoonians as the 3 major powers that seem to be controlling Mos Espa. And this comes into play at the end of the episode. So let's sort of table that. But again, this is sort of this is one of those storytelling choices that I question for this episode. Boba Fett has always been portrayed, and again, it's in expanded universe canon as sort of like this master planner, a guy who's always 1 or 2 steps ahead of his opponents, ahead of his prey. And this Boba Fett on the show seems to be a bit more naive as to the power vacuum that existed in Mos Espa, and that in the intervening years since Jabba's death, again, we're picking up Boba Fett getting his armor back. It's been 5 years. We're still covering a lot of time. We don't know how long he was in the Sarlacc, and we don't know a lot of that timeline. But again, he doesn't get his armor back until the Mandalorian, which we've been told multiple times is roughly 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So a 5-year power vacuum, a 5-year power struggle with Mos Espa and Tatooine that Bib Fortuna oversaw and apparently shared power with these other 3 families. So yeah, I mean, it's a storytelling choice. Boba Fett in a situation, he's a little bit in over his head, and I think that's what they want us to sort of feel as he begins to process things, as he starts to kind of figure that out on his own. Like, you know, the way season 2 of The Mandalorian ends with him killing Bib and then sitting on the throne, it felt like we're just supposed to assume that, like, oh, now he's the most powerful gangster on Tatooine in the sector, you know, head of a crime family, blah, blah, blah. What they're showing us is a more complicated sort of rise to power. And they're underlining the fact that Boba Fett has no respect amongst the other families. He's just sort of like this interloper, an attempted usurper, if you will. And obviously, at the end of this episode, he's going to have to come to terms with the other families if they're going to stave off what happens at the end of the episode, which, as we will get to, and I'm assuming you all have seen at this point, is the Pike Syndicate and their attempt to take control of Tatooine and Mos Eisley. Mos Espa, Mos Eisley by extension. But yeah, the Pike Syndicate moving in to take control of Jabba's old territories. Again, interesting choices. And I like the Pike Syndicate. I am a fan of the Pike Syndicate. Spending more time with the Pikes, I'm all on board. But I thought it was an interesting decision to have Boba be so naive. And now, in the 3rd chapter, he has to be like, all right, 88, catch me up on what's been going on. And it's a bit of a stretch. It's a bit of a stretch, but I can go with that one. I can make that one work. What happens next is we get the great Stephen Root makes his debut in the Star Wars universe as a watermonger, and he's come to plead with Boba to deal with some street toughs, some street urchins, some Utes, if you will, who are causing him problems. They're stealing water and doing bad things to his business, and Peel offers to pay more tribute and blah 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 if Boba will deal with these street toughs and handle that. What happens next is Boba. He likes the cut of their jib. He likes their moxie, and Boba Fett, a man with a burgeoning criminal empire of 3 subordinates, and I'm not even counting 88. I'm counting 2 Gamorreans and Fennec Shand. so again, he likes the moxie on this street tough, and he decides he's going to recruit them to his cause, and the watermonger has no appreciation for that. So let's go ahead and play that scene as Boba Fett recruits the street gang who ride very fancy floating Vespas, and the watermonger, played by Stephen Root, being very, very upset with this choice.
Then you will work for me. You got guts, I'll give you that. You better fight as good as you talk, Dank.
No! They stole from me! And you're just going to let them off?
What do they owe you?
1,300 credits.
For water?
1,300 credits?
Give them 500.
What? They owe 1,300.
I heard you the first time. Take the 500 and consider it resolved, if you want to continue to do business in my territory. If you don't like it, you can move to Mos Eisley.
Fine.
And cut your prices. The rest of you gather up your gack, follow me.
All right, so this seems to be another bone of contention amongst the fans on social media, the Star Wars devotees on social media. Many of them seem to not like the Street Gang. They're weird. I'm not going to lie. Like a group of youths who want to augment themselves with droid parts seems weird, seems random. We don't really know why. We don't know their philosophy. We only know what Stephen Root's character, Lord Appeal, told us about how it makes them tougher. I don't know. I'm not interested in really severing a limb to get a droid arm. That seems strange to me. But I don't live on Tatooine, so what the hell do I know? And I think the other side of it is that people don't seem to be liking is this sort of more, I'm going to go with the word benevolent or merciful, Boba Fett than maybe what we were expecting. Because, again, he doesn't show up and kill the Street Gang. He recruits them. He doesn't turn on Lord Appeal and kill him for price gouging. He just, pays him off what he thinks is a fair price and tells him to shut the heck up. And it seems like that has annoyed people as well. Like that Boba Fett's just not. Thus far in the show, Boba Fett really hasn't fired his blaster yet, and the level of violence and mayhem that I think we all sort of expected from the show has not come to pass at this particular time. Boba Fett, again, we all believe him to be a man of action, and right now he seems to be more of a man of words. And again, I'm willing to bear this out because what they seem to be trying to tell us is that Boba Fett went through a transformative experience when he was in the Sarlacc. His near-death experience has changed him and caused him to re-examine his methods and the way he lived his life and the way he conducted his business. So I'm still waiting to see a little bit more of that, and we have several chapters to go. So I want to see if they will kind of dive into that at a later date, at the next chapter, at the next installment. Again, we still have 4 to go. And maybe we'll get a little bit more clarity on why he is the way that he is. So let's bear with the man as he's attempting to conduct business in a new manner. Am I out of line for asking this of the watching audience? I don't think so. But if you disagree with me, you probably think I'm being a total butt. and whatever. Agree to disagree. But by and large, if you've watched 3 chapters and whether you're sort of on the fence or not, like, you got to finish it out. Like, see where we land. And if by the end you're not happy, then you're not happy, and you can bail out for season 2. But let's see what this story's going to be. Let's see where we end up, and if we do not end up in a place that we all like and are happy about, we can have that conversation. We really, really can. But, and again, there's another element to this sort of more merciful, benevolent Boba Fett that we'll get to a little bit later in this review. Because, again, I have my criticisms with this episode. And while the Street Gang is not my favorite element of it, I'm willing to see where it goes, because at the same time as the episodes, or even in last episode, I was like, when is Boba Fett going to get like some sort of like muscle together here to enforce his claims on these territories? Right now it's him and Fennec and 2 Gamorreans. And at least now he has like, a couple of other people to help support his claims and defend his stakes in all these businesses and territories. So progress. So let's get to the next chapter. I'll play another little clip here for you. Hang on.
The Kentan Striders have already collected protection money for the same territory you lay claim to.
You don't have to pay that speeder bike gang. We far outnumber them. The sands have belonged to the Tuscans since the oceans dried.
We are happy to do business with either party, but we do not want to be taken advantage of by paying protection to both. I'm sure you understand.
I will resolve this. You will not hear from the Nikto Sand Riders again.
So now we're in our flashback sequence. Boba Fett leaving his tribe of Sand People, his Tuscan Raiders, his adopted clan, his adopted tribe, to go to Mos Eisley to bargain with the Pikes to pay the Tuscans protection money. If they're going to run their train through the Tuscans territory, you got to pay the toll, baby. And that's what Boba goes to do. Except we are then entered. As we meet with the Pike, we are told about the Kintan Striders, which is the swoop gang that Boba Fett stole the bikes from in Chapter 2 to do the train robbery, the train heist. I guess, heist maybe a strong word, but the train destruction and theft of the Pike's goods, their spice, their weapons, all that good stuff. Bubba's going to barter and to make peace with the Pikes and figure this whole thing out. And we find out that the Pikes are paying protection money to the Kintan Striders already. And the Kintan Striders, while Boba is in Mos Eisley, strike against Boba's adopted clan. This is my biggest issue with this particular episode. Because we went from the highest of highs with Boba becoming part of this tribe, being adopted by the tribe, getting wrapped into the ceremonial, the sacred wrappings and robes of the Tuscans, being part of that clan, building and constructing it and beveling his own Gaddafi stick, and in this wonderful, beautiful montage, and then the firelight sequence at the end, the dance around the fire, the tribal ceremony. Just so incredible in Chapter 2, and we throw it away in this one with the death of the Tuscans as a consequence of Boba's actions with the train heist and with coming after the swoop gang at Tashi Station. The whole thing, I would imagine this swoop gang takes this as an attack against their claim of the territory and against their protection racket for the Pikes. And so they lash out and they come after the Tuscans. This all, don't get me wrong, it makes sense. Like it thematically, story-wise, it makes sense. But I wish they had played this out longer. Like this is the sort of taffy that you could have pulled for another episode or two. And again, Boba's indoctrination to this clan and his time with his clan really could have explored his emotional state a lot more fully if we had gotten to spend more time with them in these flashback sequences. Doing it this way, it just sort of becomes pathos. It sort of becomes like empty emotional stakes for the character to spur them forward without us experiencing the dramatic loss, right? Like, again, we were at the highest of highs with him and his clan last week, and then it's taken away from us right away. Like, this should have been nurtured. This should have been nurtured. We'll stick with nurtured. Again, you don't have to play with it for too long. You don't want to spend too much time with this, but you want to kind of cement that relationship that Boba has with the Tuscans, and to take it away now felt like it was just so early. It was so unearned, and they're asking us to feel something emotional for this, and I think it's honestly too early. The only thing I felt emotionally was I just got gypped of further exploration of the Tuscan Raiders and their culture and their people and their species and their society. That's what I'm upset about. Is I've been deprived of that exploration, and that is what bums me out the most. Again, I know it's a short season. It's 7 episodes, and you didn't have to spend a ton of time. Again, maybe even one more episode. Just another episode to sort of cement and show the bonds that he's forging with these people. Would have gone a long way. We speculated, or I speculated back in the first episode review that perhaps the Tuscans would be there'd be some sort of incident, some sort of moment where Boba Fett miscalculates something and it costs the Tuscans everything, and he has to leave the tribe. Or again, go back and listen to it. I mean, we talked about it that's just what, for right or wrong, it's a storytelling method, right? Like you motivate your character by the loss of something, right? So we knew this was in the realm of possibility. For it to happen so quickly was disappointing. And again, I mentioned it once more, especially after the highs of Chapter 2. one of the most phenomenal episodes of Star Wars television I've ever seen. And then to kind of have the rug pulled out from under us with this, with the Tuscans in this one, it's a real bummer. It really bothers me from a storytelling perspective that we did it this way. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more I can express. Like, this one aspect of the story bothered me the most, upset me the most, and was like, wow, I don't think I would have done that had I been in charge of the show, or had I been consulted about it. I think I would have been playing with it for one more episode at least. But again, I asterisk marks. We don't know the story. We don't know the full story just yet. Let's see what happens with the flashbacks. I mean, there is it is touching when Boba finds the tribe slaughtered, massacred, and the lengths he goes to honor their deaths by observing their rituals and their ceremonial funeral rites. I mean, that's still important. That's still good stuff. I just again, I wish it had gotten to last a little bit longer. I wish we had gotten to see that bond form a bit more deeply before the Tuscans were taken from us in this way. Because I did sort of suspect that this might be the route they went. But I also thought this might be the route that they went to sort of show the trajectory for the character, to show Boba Fett on this path. Like, he's sort of self-discovering, right? Like, he's sort of trying to figure out who he's going to be in his new life, in his sort of like rebirth period after being reborn from the Sarlacc, right? And now he'd rises to be daimyo, to be a sort of an advocate for the Sand People, for the Tusken Raiders. I don't know if that's the case anymore, and I still have a lot of questions. I still have a lot of I don't know. And yeah, again, we don't know the full story just yet. We will reevaluate as we go further into the show. The other interesting choice, and again, I would have done this differently had it been me, if they had asked me, which, why would they? You're getting these flashback sequences when Boba, in the present time, is in the back of the tank. He's in his chamber. He's healing from various injuries, various wounds. And at this point, I suspect we are supposed to just believe that it's still recovering from the time in the Sarlacc, from the digestive juices that like soaked into his body over an indeterminate amount of time. Even though I still think there's more going on there than we've been led to believe. But we'll get there. We'll get there. I think the other thing I would have done, if you wanted to structure this episode the way it was, is I would have had Boba's flashback sequence interrupted as he's coming back from Mos Eisley on the Bantha, and he sees the smoke on the horizon. That, to me, is the moment that he should be ripped out of the back to chamber by Black Chrysanthemum and then thrown into the fight. It's a little too convenient that he gets to finish his flashback and then Black Chrysanthemum rips him out of the back to chamber. Now, granted, the way in which it was shot, the way in which it was presented, with the view up of Black Chrysanthemum in his face, yanking him out of the back to tank, pretty awesome. But very convenient in the way in which it was done, as far as like, well, I finished my flashback. I guess now's a good time to get pulled out of the back to tank. So, and then you get some good fisticuffs, some good action here. But my other criticism of this episode, like, I get it. It's Star Wars. It's Disney. And Disney is very much played up the angle that Star Wars is for families and it's family friendly. But you have your main character, Boba Fett, an anti-hero at best, engaged in fisticuffs, in Mortal Kombat, with a massively oversized Wookiee like Black Chrysanthemum, and you have vibro knuckle blades, and you have biting going on, and there's not a lick of blood anywhere in this battle. And I was a little distraught by that. Boba Fett shows no wear and tear He shows no signs of having been almost killed by Black Chrysanthemum. And I was a bit upset about this. It seemed a bit, I don't know. That element alone seemed a bit too family friendly for me. Too much of like Disney being like, Star Wars is for everyone. We can't have blood on this show. I don't like that. I'm not crazy about that aspect of it. I'm okay. Again, I get it. Star Wars is for everyone. I'm okay with that. But I mean, a little bit of blood, a little bit of showing like some kind of battle damage on these characters, you know, a black eye, some bruising, like something like show me that they were in peril. They were in danger. They were in the vices of death. And you put more emotional impact into that sequence. But at the end of his battle with Black Chrysanthemum, he's just fine. He got his hand bitten. He almost got crushed. But there's nothing wrong with him. Like, he should have broken ribs, a broken sternum, something. And let alone his hand that got bitten by Black Chrysanthemum. Nothing's going there. I get it. He has a back to tank. But I don't know. I think you make Boba Fett a more relatable, a more humanistic character if you show him taking that abuse, if you show him taking that damage and stepping up and coming and getting back on his feet and getting back into the battle. Disney owns Marvel. These characters are beaten and bruised and battered constantly. And it works just fine. It works just fine. It works great because it conveys a sense of danger. It shows a sense of consequence and scale. And I wish Star Wars were to do that more. And again, we're 3 episodes into this, and other than a missile in the first episode, Boba Fett hasn't fired a shot at anybody. He gets in the fisticuffs here, and he does some damage on Black Chrysanthemum with his his Gaddafi. But again, no blood, no nothing, no anything. And I'm not asking for Star Wars to be a gore fest, but I mean, be a little bit realistic. My goodness. So this is when his newly hired swoop gang comes in to save him. The Gamorreans get involved. They come to his aid. It's a really good battle. It's really, really enjoyable. What I thought was most interesting was the character who showed up at the last moment to sort of save the day and to drop Black Chrysanthemum down the trap into the empty Rancor pit is Fennec Shand. Where was Fennec Shand during all this? How did Black Chrysanthemum get into the palace? Is Fennec Shand setting Boba Fett up for failure? She seems to be very is a strong word, but she seems to be sort of disagreeing with Boba's tactics, with Boba's philosophy on ruling out of respect and not fear. I mean, I'm sure she's profiting by some extent, and she owes Boba for her life. But, I mean, Fennec Shand is a character who's still a bit of an enigma to us. And the notion that she could possibly be the one betraying Boba Fett to the Pikes or to, Mok Shiez or even to, like, the twins at the time, I mean, that's a very real possibility. Because, again, you have to ask, how did Black Chrysanthemum get into the palace? And with seeming relative ease. And Fennec Shand is the last one to arrive on the scene. Now, again, this could be an intentional misdirect. Because I don't want to see Ming-Na Wen betray Boba Fett. I love Ming-Na Wen. I want to go to a dinner party hosted by Ming-Na Wen. So please stay on the show. And don't betray Boba Fett, because that would upset me in a very deep, emotional sort of way. But the question must be asked. How did Black Chrysanthemum gain such easy access to the palace, to Boba Fett's private chamber, and be able to yank him out of that back to chamber? And again, that's another element that seems to be having people very, very upset, is that Boba Fett is not a very capable fighter without his armor. I mean, Boba Fett's an old man. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else to tell you. He's older than Han Solo, and like him and Han Solo have been principal rivals for a very, very long time. So, I mean, I guess we'll shake that out. Well, again, bear with us. Let's see what happens. I still think there's some sort of long-term injury that Boba Fett has that we have not addressed just yet. Let's see where the show goes. I may be wrong about that. We will examine that as the time comes. And then the next scene is like a very weird, after Black Chrysanthemum has been trapped in the Rancor pit, the empty Rancor pit, It's Boba and Fennec at like a massive dinner table with way too much food going on, and Fennec being very casual about another assassination attempt against like her boss slash partner, right? Way too casual. So I that all strikes me as very, very interesting. I'm curious if Fennec is double dealing. We'll have to see how that shakes out. But this gets us to the next big pivotal moment of the episode where everything sort of turns, where everything we thought was going to be going on is actually changing again. And that is a confrontation as the twins on their litter come up to Jabba's palace to make amends and sort of go with good graces. Again, I'll just stick with make amends. They go to make amends with Boba and announce their decision to leave Tatooine because there is another conflict coming that they do not want to be involved in. And we're going to talk about that after this.
I need to respond. Everyone is watching, waiting for me to make the next move.
Have some food.
I have to send a message.
You already did. They sent Chrysanthemum to kill you, and now he's locked up in your dungeon. I say, you wait for them to show their hand.
These are Hutts. Waiting will only give them another opportunity to strike again.
Pardon the interruption, Master.
What is it?
The twins are here. They have brought a gift.
So the meeting with the twins occurs. They're apologetic. They're making good against their attempt to assassinate Boba Fett. They apologize for sending Black Chrysanthemum. They offer a gift of a rancor in our introduction to Danny Trejo himself as a new rancor pitmaster, and the twins are explaining why they are pulling back from their attempt to claim Jabba's territories. They never outright say what exactly is going on, but they say there's been another claim. They've made a horrible mistake. They apologize to Boba Fett, but they're leaving. They're going back to Nal Hutta. Now, I sort of had to wonder, because again, if you're a longtime listener of the show, you know that I'm reading the Star Wars comics and all the books, and in the comics, pre Return of the Jedi, there's a massive event against the Hutts. The death of the Hutt Council at the hands of Darth Vader, leaving Jabba as the pretty much the sole figurehead, running all of Hutt territory from Tatooine. And now, after Jabba's death, you sort of wonder, are they still in disarray? Is there not a Hutt Council? These twins seem to be trying to assume and amass power, but we don't really know the situation with the Hutts, even 5 years after Jabba's death. So you have to assume they're still in a bit of disarray. And so the idea of engaging in a war with another syndicate who has a claim on the territory is not of interest to them. They say it's bad business and things like that. They also offer, as tribute to Boba Fett, the life of Black Chrysanthemum. Their prisoner. The Gamorrean guards trot him out. It's Boba's attempt to return him to them, and they say, hey, you can sell him back to the gladiators for all we care. We don't give a gosh darn. Do whatever you want. And then they leave. But they never say what syndicate is also has a claim, which is another indication that, like, and again, I'm sure it's for the sake of the story, for the narrative's purposes, but it's a little simplistic. And we've sort of talked about that with Favreau in the past, even into The Mandalorian, where things are a little bit too easy. It seems like, a couple questions would solve a lot more problems, but Boba doesn't ask the question. We have to wait till we like our big dramatic reveal at the end of the episode. And again, that's a storytelling choice. It's not my favorite choice, but it is what it is, and we roll with those punches as fans of the story. And again, you can criticize that. That is complete within your rights, and I will agree with you on that aspect of it. Like, why doesn't Boba say, well, what other syndicate? Like, why are you leaving? Who do you not want to engage in a war with? These are questions that Boba should be asking to the Hutts before they leave. But it is what it is. And again, I'm sure it's for the dramatic purposes of the reveal at the end of the episode, which, if you're connecting the dots, is not that dramatic of a reveal. So I don't know why they just don't say it, but we'll talk about that at the end. So what we get next is Fennec makes a comment. She's very impressed by the gift, and it's a callback to the last episode. How like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had a rancor in here? Well, now they get a rancor in there, and it's a calf that Danny Trejo's pitmaster, beastmaster character has been saving since birth, basically, and training since birth, and now he wants to raise him up, and he's going to be Boba's pitmaster, basically, and Boba is entranced by the creature. He's fascinated by it. He loves it. He strokes it by the ear. He sort of begins to bond with it. And Danny Trejo's character informs us that he has these blinders over his eyes because like the first person that he sees, the first being that he sees, will imprint on him, and they will bond. And Boba, expressing a desire to learn how to ride a rancor, gets to bond with the creature the most. Now, riding a rancor is pretty badass. Danny Trejo makes reference to the Witches of Dathomir riding rancors, which goes back to old EU canon. And Boba Fett makes reference to riding creatures even bigger than a rancor. And you have to wonder, well, where's that? What exactly is he referencing? Obviously the mythosaurs are a big deal in Mandalorian culture, but supposedly they are long extinct in Boba Fett's era. So you have to wonder, is he talking about the 1978 holiday special when Boba's riding that creature on that weird planet, right? I forget the name of the creature. It escapes me at this moment, but he's riding a big old creature out of that sea when he's talking to Boba Fett. When he's talking to Luke Skywalker and calling him my friend every 5 seconds. So I'm curious if that is the reference. Another reference to the Star Wars holiday special. I mean, again, that is where the Am and Phase Pulse Blaster came from. So why not refer to that character or to that creature as bigger than the Rancor? And now we get now we are definitely 100% foreshadowing Boba Fett riding a Rancor, which is pretty badass. And if you're a fan of the comic books, let's go to IDW. Star Wars: The High Republic, issue number 6, the cover of Jedi Master Avar Kriss riding a Rancor, and I mean it's a very evocative image. And like, listen, if the season finale is Boba Fett riding a Rancor through the streets of Mos Espa to dispatch whoever's allied against him, I'm not gonna be mad at it at all. And I like the scene. I like the scene of Boba bonding with the Rancor, of him getting connected to this creature, of him sort of, again, another sort of moment where he's sort of humanizing himself as he bonds with this creature who, in his perception, in his limited time around Rancors from Jabba's palace, just thought they were bred for fighting and killing and eating people that upset Jabba. But no, the creatures are far more complicated. They're emotional. They're They bond with other beings, and these are all things I'm on board for. This is all stuff I'm really excited about. So I mean, let's see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, again, if we don't see Boba Fett riding that Rancor through the streets of Mos Espa in episode 7, or assuming that's the finale, then we've read that whole scene completely wrong. But I really liked it, and then it is interrupted at the end. By 88, who comes in to say, like, well, guess what? Mayor Maxiez is not going to meet with you. Sorry about that. And he's not going to deal with that garbage. So they roll into Mos Espa. He takes his Vespa gang with him to confront the mayor of Mos Espa. They meet with the Major Domo once again, who tries to put them off, goes into the mayor's chambers, locks the door, blah, 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 and then attempts to run away in a speeder bike. We get a quote-unquote high-speed chase through the streets of Mos Espa. Let me address this scene with you all for a moment. I've watched this episode 3 times now. The first time I saw it on Wednesday night at like 12:30 or whatever it was, when I was watching the show, I didn't think it looked very good. And that could be for a ton of reasons. Again, it's a show, not a movie. as many millions of dollars as Disney's putting into this series, like these episodes do have a budget per episode. All right, you got to stick within that. So there are probably some limitations. That being said, when I watched it the following morning, later in the a little bit later, I had gotten some sleep. I watched it on my lunch break. It looked better to me, and maybe it's because I was a little bit more familiar with what I was seeing. I was a bit accustomed, and again. Let's think about the limitations here, all right? It's a lot of twists and turns through the streets of Mos Espa here. It's hard to really go super, super fast. You're not going to get like the straight-ahead speeder bikes on Endor that you're accustomed to. This is a little bit more plotting, a little bit more methodical because they're hanging hard rights and hard lefts, and they're skittering through traffic, and they're trying to avoid protocol droids and biffs in what's the word I'm thinking of? I can't think of it right now. In those sort of like carriages, that are being pulled by the droid. It's going to annoy me, and I'll think of it 5 seconds after the podcast is over. But you know what I mean. So I think it plays. I think it plays better on the second viewing as you're a little bit more familiar with what you're getting ready to see. Yes, there are some limitations with the CGI, with the budgets, with the computer, the whole effects scenario. I get that. I understand. Bear with it. It's a show. It's not a movie. Again, there's a budget for these things. They probably spent more money in Chapter 2 for the train sequence than they did on this. You got to give it a little bit of a little bit leeway here. All right, give them. I don't want to say give them a pass, but understand. There are limitations. There are restrictions episode by episode, and maybe they had to save a little bit of coin because they have a big effect coming up in the finale, and it's like, oh, all right, we'll kind of cut this down a little bit here. We'll pinch some pennies here. Whether you agree or disagree with that is up to you 100%. But I'm just saying, bear with it. Let's see what happens. Let's see how it shakes out. And then ultimately we get to the quote unquote major revelation for the episode, which is that Mayor Maxiez of Mos Espa is in alignment, is in agreement, is bartering a deal with the Pike Syndicate, who has now been heavily hinted at for the past 2 episodes as being a major player, majorly interested in Tatooine. And Boba sends his men and confirms this as a bunch more Pikes arrive on Tatooine, arrive in Mos Espa, and the sort of preparations for war against the Pike Syndicate begin. So the episode, by and large, is a fair amount of table setting. I don't agree with the sort of table clearing methodology they used to wipe the Tuscan storyline away. I'm curious to see where that goes next. Boba Fett on the dunes, on the Dune Sea with the lone bantha. Does he go and pursue Cobb Vanth right away? Is there more to this story? Does he come after that gang? The Kintan Striders, does he take care of them before he goes after getting his armor back? I suspect we'll find out. I speculated earlier in the season that maybe we would get some episodes with flashbacks for Fennec Shand. That doesn't appear to be the case at all, and I guess that bears some merit because again, it's called the Book of Boba Fett, not the Book of Fennec Shand. So, all right, fair enough. But yeah, there's still what again if my information holds and it's 7 episodes, we still got 4 to go. We're doing okay. Let's see where the story goes. This episode has some ups and downs. They made some choices that I didn't agree with personally, but let's see how it pans out at the end. Let's see where the end game is. Let's see how it shakes out, and then we can reevaluate and we can criticize. And again, I ask humbly that if you don't like this episode, if you want to blast this episode, by all means, that is your business. You can do that 1,000%. But what I do ask is that you remember that Jon Favreau is just as culpable as Robert Rodriguez. And please keep that in mind. Don't just blast Robert, blast Jon. It's his script. It was his story. If you're just mad because you didn't like the look of something, I guess you can come after Robert for that. But that's your business, and I'm not gonna begrudge you that. Again, your opinion is your opinion, and you are 1,000% entitled to it. All right, so yeah, I don't know exactly how I feel about this episode, especially after the highs of last week's episode. My rating sort of seems to be hovering somewhere between 6.5 to 7 on this episode. And again, maybe I'm looking. It's a little hard. I'm trying to be as objective as I can, but I loved chapter 2 so much. This one was a bit of a letdown. I was really bummed that they ended the Tuscan storyline so early. But I still want to see if those flashback sequences will at some point underline and highlight Boba's motivations for becoming the daimyo of Tatooine. I'm still waiting for that because I want to know, like, what spurred him to this course of action? What spurred him to this decision? I also want to know if they're going to show, like, why in the finale of Mandalorian Season 2, after he drops them off, he just leaves. Like, did he have business back on Tatooine he needed to get to? I don't know. Again, there's still questions, but let's see where the show goes. Let's see what happens. Let's try to be good Star Wars fans and not just rip them a new one before we know the end game. So yeah, I'll stick to somewhere between 6.5 and 7 is where I probably land on this episode. The Swoop King doesn't annoy me as much as it does some people. Again, they are super hover Vespas, and again, they don't kind of go with like the used in, lived in, grimy sort of universe that Star Wars is. But I suppose I could write that off to being like kids who are just like super protective of like the few things they own in life. And again, they must be doing something if they're acquiring droid parts to put in their bodies. Maybe that'll get explored more fully. We'll see. All right. So that is our review. Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Espa, the Book of Boba Fett. Yeah. Once again, directed by Robert Rodriguez, written by Jon Favreau. Good stuff. All right. Hey, by the way, if you are a fan of this podcast and you're enjoying what I'm doing, the content I am providing, and if you have the means and are interested, by all means, head on over to patreon.com/Mandovision. You can become a Mandovision maniac and support the show. You will gain access to sweet bonus content. Thank you to our current Patreons, the Aspen Chodi, the Batman Abejo, Jeff Nail. Jeff co-hosts The Ring in Ear, a great music podcast. Please check them out. Thanks to Evil Circle, the evilest of all circles, the Squid Master General, Mr. Brian Broussard, the New Jersey Devil, Mark Wegemer, our very own Joker and Harley Quinn, Brian and Krista of Pariah Brewing Company, here in San Diego and Baltimore, Maryland, the Beer Hop Brigadier General, Jesus Beer Hops, the Silent Assassin, he who shall not be named, and Syndicate Ram, co-host of the Come On, It's So Good podcast, a show that we are very, very good friends with. So please check them out. And I thank you all for the support. Patreons, non-Patreons, if you're here, you're supporting the show, and that means the world to me. Remember, we are on social media at Mando_Vision, Twitter, Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, sharing, following the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert and the people who owe you life debts. Please remind them of that too. And again, one more time, if you have the time and the inclination, 5-star reviews, they help us out so tremendously. Thank you in advance for that. All right, Bucketheads, we love you. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the show. Hope you enjoyed Chapter 3. Again, there's some things to criticize, some things to talk about, but by and large, it's not like I'm not watching next week, so don't worry about that. Let's go ahead and get out of here. We thank our Lord and Savior, Boba Fett, and the other Mandalorians, the Mandalore himself, perhaps, and the Darksaber. We'll be back very, very soon with another Star Wars: The Clone Wars rewatch and Chapter 4 of the Book of Boba Fett. Thanks for being here. All right, Bucketheads, you know this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.